Okay, so I'm going to go over the making of the shadows in this and how I go about creating these colorful yet, well, I can make them as dark as I want or as light as I want, but I'm seeing very colorful shadows, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love to paint, and I want to show you how I go about doing them. I do them by, I first go in and I wet an area, and then I go and I start placing color, dropping in color where I see it, and then letting it dry and going over and doing another layer. So what I'd like to show you, I just have to pull up my reference photo really quick, but I know I have it down here to look at, but I want a bigger one to look at from my iPad. So what I'm going to show you is how I go about doing that so that you can begin to experiment with how you want to go about doing that and do that from there. So like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my entire area of the shadow. The first one I'm going to do is this one right here next to the pot. I know in my other, my original painting that I have, I have the pot that's already established with paint as well as the peppers. But to redo this for you, I just quickly redrew a section of the original composition that included 3 of the shadows so that I could show you again how I go about doing that. So the first thing I'm going to do with this one shadow here, the center shadow right in here, right underneath the lid and next to the pot, is I'm going to wet the area. I'm going to get it nice and wet. I don't want any puddles. I just want this area to be nice and wet and shiny when I'm done. This area here is why you would want a nice pointed brush, a nice watercolor brush that comes to a point, because I don't want my paint going over and into another area where I don't want a shadow. So I'm going to just go over these pencil lines that I've got down. And I don't know if you can see it, but you see that shiny wet paper. That's what you want. You don't want to get a puddle, but you want shiny paper. You want to get it nice and wet. Nice and wet with your brush. Nice clean water. If your water is dirty, if it's got a lot of paint in it, the first thing you have to do is go get yourself some clean water, and I would recommend too maybe having an extra container of water that you can use if you need more of it. Okay, so that I've got nice and shiny. Got my area nice and shiny. Got to make sure I don't have any puddles. Oh, I see a spot with no water. Got to make sure that entire surface is shiny. You don't want any areas where there isn't any. And I see a little bit too much. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to get the water out of my brush. And then I'm going to go back where I see too much water and I'm going to take that water right up. Okay? So I'm basically lifting up extra water that's on the paper with my thirsty brush. Okay? So now it's still shiny, but I don't have a puddle. All right. Okay. So if I'm looking in that spot right under the lid I'm looking really close on my end. I see the color yellow in there and I see the color green. So the first color I'm going to put in, just as my first layer of color, is some cadmium lemon. I see that color. I see a cool yellow. And I see some of that reflective green as well from green pepper. So I'm going to put an area with a little bit of green to get some of this excess green off my brush. Okay. So I know you can't see my palette, but okay. So I'm going to go in and I see the yellow. Oops, I got a little green on there still from my, hang on. I still had some green paint in my brush and I didn't want that. So, all right. I see that yellow right underneath this spot right in here. So I'm just going to lay some yellow in there. Okay. That's where I see a little bit of yellow happening. And I see it going up this way right there. Towards that right there. So I'm going to drop that in. And that's about, I'll see a little bit right up in here. Right up in there. Okay. I'll let that sit. And we'll let that sit for a minute. And I'm seeing some purple right in there. Now I don't want the purple and the yellow to meet, because when the purple and yellow meet, they're opposite colors on the color wheel and they're going to turn into a neutral color, and it could very well make brown, and I don't want brown. So I got to make sure that those two colors do not meet. So I'm going to take some dioxazine violet on my palette, and I'm going to take my brush with a little bit of that purple on there, and I'm going to get most of the paint off, or not most of it, but a lot of it off, because like I said, I don't want the yellow and the purple to meet, touch. I might have to wait a little more because I see that coming down right there. I just don't want them to meet. I don't want to make a brown. Not at all. So, okay. I'm going to carry that over. Just carry that over here a little bit. Putting that in. It looks really dull on my screen for you guys. I don't know why that is, but it looks really dull. It doesn't even look like purple, which is really weird. I'm going to look and see what kind of, really quick, see what's going on with this. Let's see, brightness. That's really dull looking. See, on my picture, it's purple, but on yours, it's not. On the screen, it is not purple. Okay. Well, just trust me, it's purple. So, put a little bit more there. Now it's going to dry lighter. It's not going to dry dark. So it's actually, I'm going to just have to let this dry. I'm going to let that go. I have to let this dry now, so I'm going to move on to this shadow right here, okay? We're going to let this dry so I can go in again. Actually, I am going to lay a little bit of green in there. Yeah, I am going to lay some green in there, and I can do that because it's okay if these two mix. I see a little bit of green going on. I see that going on right in there, and it's going out that way. Like that. And it's going up a little bit like in there. So, and this here is from this pepper. That is reflective color from this pepper. So I'm going to let that sit and mingle like that. And I'm going to feather it a little bit. Right, okay. Let's feather this a little bit right there. A little bit right there. All right, let's leave that. If your paint is granular, you're going to notice that in the shadows for sure. There's a little grain of pigment in that. Little speck, can't get it out. But I'm going to wait. Okay, so let's go and add some color in this shadow here. I don't like that color that I'm seeing, and I'm really sorry about that. I just don't understand why, oh gosh, no, why it's doing that. So let's see what happens if I adjust that. Nope, the color's just not going to change. Okay. All right, so, all right, well, let's worry about this other shadow, okay? All right, so let's add some water to this one. Get that nice, add a nice drop of water in there so I can move it around, cover the area up, move it around. I want to make sure I get it all covered with water. I don't want any dry spots in there. Not when I'm laying all this color in there for my shadow. There. All right. So this part, you got to get a nice brush with a nice point. There's that little piece of the shadow coming out there like that, little tail. And I'm going to cover my line, my pencil line. Actually, when I retrace this from the original tracing of my drawing with the graphite pencil, again, there was enough graphite left still on that where I was able to retrace my drawing, which is wonderful. And again, I was heavy-handed and got it really dark, so I did have to go once again and lighten up my lines with the kneaded eraser. I don't know why, but every time I do that, I try to be gentle. I'm always getting it a little bit too dark. Okay, I've got the water there. Push it along. Get it here. All right. Get that. Gently push the water along, filling that entire spot, making sure you got a nice shiny area. There. A little bit more water up in here. A little drop in there. A little bit along there. Bring that out. Okay. Now when you're doing this, you have to be extra vigilant because you don't want this to dry up as you're doing this. You got to keep it nice and wet. You don't want a puddle. You just want it nice and shiny when you're dropping in these colors to get these nice gradations. So let's do that. All right. All right, nice and shiny. I know you can see it on the camera there. So that's nice and shiny. Let's see. Oh, that's off. Turn it. Oh, it's too bright. Okay, that's too much. All right. Just trying to figure out this color situation. Okay, so when I'm looking at my reference photo and I'm looking at this here, in my photograph, I'm seeing a warm blue up in here, or a real nice, beautiful, bright blue. So I'm going to take a tiny bit of phthalo blue, and I'm going to drop that in up there. And I said tiny, I mean tiny, because this stuff is very, very staining, and I don't want a lot of it. Nope, I just want a little bit. Now, there's a lot of water there, and I see that color. Ooh, that's a lot. Hang on, get rid of some of that. That's pretty dark, but I'm going to move it along. Get in my brush. Let's move it along. Got that. I see it up in the top. Up at the top. That's where I'm seeing it. This line here should have not been that dark. It should have been a lighter color. Lighter line than what it is. All right. Okay, so I'm seeing it come in right about still there. Oh. Let's see. Okay, and I see a little bit more right there. So now what I'm seeing is it gets a little bluer, deeper. So I actually see more violet. I see violet, and I also see a deeper blue. So I'm going to go in with some French ultramarine, which is a deeper blue. It's going to be, let's get a little more paint on my brush. And I see that right up in here. So I'm going to mingle those two together. Just put that in there, let that drop in. See that in there. And I'm going to bring it into there just a little bit. Now I want to get some of that water off my brush. And dropping that in. And I see it up in here as well. Now I gotta move quickly because it's starting to soak in, okay? So I'm starting to lose that shine on the paper, so I gotta move quickly. So I'm seeing it up here. Definitely seeing it disappear. That shine is disappearing, especially up in here. So I gotta move kind of fast. Right? And okay, now I see some violet. I want to get that in there real quick. I see it in here. Got to get this in fast. So this is a different kind of paper I'm using here in this area. I'm using a different kind of watercolor paper. So if you see it behave differently, that's probably why. So let me just get a little more violet on my brush because I'm seeing that purple coming across. Oh, I see my paper's drying really fast. Whoops. I see somewhere where that paint's not supposed to go. Gotta move fast. Right there. It's not supposed to go there. And I'm going to have to feather that in there. Yeah, it's drying pretty fast. So, right there. Now, this is just the first layer. Okay. So, and it's looking a little bit spotty, so I'm going to add just a little more water, which I might get a back. Yeah, I am going to get a bloom. I don't want a bloom. So we're just going to have to do this, add some more paint. I'm liking this though. I'm liking that. And I see, what do I see? I see some of this deeper blue right here, right in there. Not quite that dark. I'm seeing that right in there. And I'm going to move it along. Actually, I see some cobalt as well, so I'm going to drop some of that in. I see the cobalt blue. Oops, that's the wrong one. Got the wrong one. Here's the cobalt right there. That's a beautiful primary blue, if you ask me. That's like a blue that's almost right smack in the middle. And I'm going to drop that in. Actually, that looks the same. Get that out of there. Let's put some more of that cobalt in there. Okay, so warm it up a little bit. And I'm going to add some more phthalo in there this time. Gotta move fast. Gotta move fast. Here. And put it up in here. And a little more violet, right? Got to take a little bit of that water off. Put it in there. Let's put it in there. A little more violet, because I see it coming across, going like that. I see it moving right along, and I see it up in here. I see it in there, so we're going to mingle it in there. And a little more phthalo. A little more phthalo. What, baby cakes? My puppy wants me to play with him. He's having a hard time that I'm not throwing the ball. See, I'm getting that too streaky now. That was a mistake. I dropped it in too late. So let's see what we can do about that. We're just going to take it, I don't want my brush to be too thirsty, because then what's going to happen is it's going to lift the paint off. And I don't want to lift the paint off. I just want to move it a little bit. That's all I want to do, is just feather it a little bit. So I don't want my brush to be too thirsty. I want it to be still relatively wet. Okay, so now I'm just going to let this dry. Okay, there's a little bit that I can lift up right there, because that is a little bit darker than I want. So I'm just taking my brush, lifting that up a little bit. Okay, so this is going to be my first layer of this shadow. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Okay, just feather it out. Lightly feather, lightly feather. I'm seeing a brush mark. All right, I'm just going to let that be. I'm not going to touch it anymore. Okay, except right there. There. All right, now we're going to move to this one. Okay, so almost the same as this. I'm seeing a warm, like a brighter shadow up at the top, because I'm seeing it, and I'm going to tell you why I think I'm seeing it this way. I'm seeing it darker down here and brighter up here. And the reason being is the sun is coming from this direction, okay? It's coming through there, or through here rather, like that. So the sun, this part here is not getting exposed to the sunshine. This one, because the sunlight is coming this way, this part of it, of the shadow, is exposed to a little bit more light than this part, okay? So it's going to go up in value and color, okay? So that is my way of thinking for that. I'm going to feather this out right here because that needs a little bit more blue because there's not enough color that dropped in there. So I'll just do that for now. We can fix it later. Okay, so now we're going to add water down here. And then we'll go back to this. So we're going to put the water down. Get it nice and shiny. Same principle here. Now, you're not going to do the final layer of this shadow because you're not going to do it and you're not going to finish the shadow until you get all the values done in your object, in your subject, okay? I can't determine the darkness of my shadow until I see the values that I have in my subject, okay? So I won't be putting another layer on top of these yet because I have to establish the values of these first. If I make these super dark, 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 that means the values of these have to be, they have to coincide. They don't have to be the same, but it has to make sense, okay? So you never paint, that's why you go from light to dark when doing watercolor, because once you go too dark, you can't take it off. And then the rest of your painting, you're going to have to adjust to have that relate. Otherwise, it's not gonna make any sense as far as light goes, and you don't want that. You want everything to be cohesive. You want everything to be as it is, as you would see it for real. Okay, so I've got my layer down of water. It's nice and shiny. I got to make sure I don't have any dry spots, no holes. And oh, I see one right there. Okay, and right there. Everything else looks good. Okay, nice and shiny. So I'm looking at my shadow area, and once again, I see violet. I think I love violet. It's probably one of my favorite colors. And I don't know why, but I see it in almost every shadow. So wrong color. Hang on. Just a minute. Hang on. I'm bringing this purple up. I'm seeing it down in here, here, there. Let's see. Let's see, I'm seeing it go up to here. So I may have a little bit too much water on here. All right, and I'm seeing, I'm going to add some phthalo blue. Took some off my brush. I'll lay it down. All right, I think I have too much water on there. All right, take that off a little bit. Okay, let's see, just mingle that together like that. Okay, and I'm seeing some of this darker blue down in here, in this area. Now, I know it looks dark now, but I'm gonna guarantee you it dries lighter. So we're gonna do that. I have too much water here because there's a puddle right there. So I'm gonna just take my brush, make it thirsty, and I'm gonna get some of this water up because I have a puddle right there at the edge and I don't want that. Okay, right, okay. So now that we've got that, Okay. I add a little bit more in here. Oops. Start in there, drop it in. This actually has, oh dear, it has the stem, and I didn't see that. My drawing is a little bit off compared to this here. There's a puddle there too, which I don't want. And I'm going to take some water off my brush, feather this out. And there's a right there. Get that in there. Feather that out. And I gotta get this up. This is too much of a puddle. I don't want it to be drying darker like that down there, up there. So let's just get that up. Feather it out just a little bit. And then this purple, I'm gonna need to put some more down here. And I'm going to come up in here with it. And I see a little bit like that. And I see it just moving into there. Yeah, this paper is a different kind of paper. So, all right, let's see. Get some of this water off my brush and see what I can do about that. Just feather it ever so gently. I don't want lines. That's what I don't want. So I'm just going to gently try and just move the paint along. Just move it along a little bit. Now, I did get it over the line right there on the edge of the pepper, and I just smudged it a little bit. But that's going to be darker, so I'm not worried about that. There. Okay. So now we're going to let this one rest. Okay, we're going to let that rest, let it dry. And just do that a little bit, feather that out a little bit more. Yeah, and whoops, I don't want that line there. Okay, so we'll let that dry. I see my, now here's what I want to point out. French ultramarine is a granulating paint, and you can see it right in here. But you know what? I don't mind it because it like breaks and separates, and I think it's pretty. This part here though I don't like, but I'm not going to address it until it's time to put the second coat on, okay? Because if I do it now, this is still wet, and if I put a wet brush on it, I'm going to lift off paint and cause havoc. So I see paint, my brush strokes right in there that I don't want either. So I'm not going to address this until I put the second layer on. I'm going to leave it for now, but right now that's a really good start. And if you'll see up here, the granulation, it separates a little bit, and you'll see it right in there too. But I'm liking it, so I'm just going to leave it. That's the nature of the paint. And I mean, obviously, if you don't want that effect, don't use that paint. Here, the phthalo is really transparent, no granulation at all. And in the dioxazine violet, there's no granulation, so you see how smooth that is? And then you see how the French ultramarine was dropped in, and you get the granulation, and you see it in here as well. But I think it's interesting. I love the color breaking up like that, so that doesn't bother me. Now I'm going to go back to this one, only because I can. It's pretty dry. It's still a tiny bit damp, but it's going to be okay. I'm just going to drop in a little bit of color on top of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to make it wet again. And let's get it wet. There, get that wet. Get in that area right there. Nice pointy brush. Get it nice and shiny. Nice and shiny. Yeah, get that shiny. No puddle, but shiny. Okay, that is ready for more paint. More paint. Oh, and I've got a wet spot right there. I want to get that up. Okay. So, I'm going to look at my shadow right now, and I'm looking at it on my reference photo, and I'm going to put in some cobalt blue, and I'm going to put that right under here, right in there. Okay, and I'm going to run it straight across and put it right there, right straight across like that. And I'm going to come to the edge right there, take some water off my brush there, and I see it here. And I'm going to go straight across there. And I'm going to add a little bit more of that color. A little bit more because I see it a little darker under here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. Now I also see the green again. So I'm just going to add a little bit more green because I see it. And I see it right here, right in there. Right in there like that. So now I added the blue and the green. And I'm still seeing that lemon yellow. I'm still seeing that, so I'm just going to put a little bit more down in there. Still seeing that. Still seeing it. Mostly I see it right there under the pot. That's a little bit too much. That's a little bit too much. But I'm going to let it sit there because I don't want it to turn green. It's going to mix anyway. And I see purple up there still. So this is going to look a little strange to you right now. But oh, that's too much water up there. Way too much water. Let's get rid of some of that. Now, if you'll notice, when I bring the purple in here, it's going to turn this to like a neutral. It's going to make it like a neutral gray when these two colors mingle, okay? Purple and green, when they're mixed together, this looks like rainbow stripes right now, which I don't like. So I'm going to get rid of that. I don't want the rainbow stripes. So I'm just going to feather this. I don't want rainbow. No, I don't. Let's see, we're going to mingle this together. Like that, right in there a little bit. Gotta be careful because it's drying already. It's drying already, so you gotta be a little careful. Right there. And I'm just gonna let that sit there like that. I'm gonna add a little bit more down here, darker. Oops, don't have enough on my brush. Okay. Right. Let's see. I'm going to go up a little bit in here and here and mingle that together a little bit. Right in there and in here like that. Right like that. I just dab my brush just a little bit. And I'm going to go back in and add just a tiny bit more purple while I can, and I'll probably go in and do another layer after this, okay? More than likely that's what I'm going to do, but I'm going to drop that purple in right there. I'm going to get some paint off my brush and water and just gently see if I can mingle these together. Yep, just a little bit. Yeah, okay. There we go. All right, and I'm going to let that dry now. I see a little bit of a bloom right there from the yellow, but I'm going to leave it because that shadow is going to have one more layer of paint on it. So I'm just going to leave it. I'll just do that right there. Okay. Okay, so that is, just feather it out a little bit. Okay, so that's how I start doing these shadows. So to finish these off, then once I get this established, then I can go in and I can start adding more layers. And I do my layers just like I did this. Sometimes in the end, I'll do one real faint glaze of one color, whether it be purple or phthalo blue, if it needs it. Not always. It's only if it needs it. Okay? So I know right now this looks really green, but there's going to be another layer put over that, and it'll take that, neutralize that green right in there. So I hope you try this. Don't shy away. It's a great way to make beautiful, beautiful shadows. Shadows are not just gray. Not at all. They are many colors. There are some shadows, like in the other pepper at the other end, that red pepper there between the pot and the red pepper. I see red in that shadow. So when I do that shadow, you'll see me dropping red down, okay? And a little opera pink, and it looks like even a little bit of yellow that I would add down there, okay? But I didn't draw that out. Sorry about that. I didn't draw that out because I didn't really have enough room on this paper. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry that it got, it didn't get included in the original film of the class. I don't know what happened, but I wanted you to see it, so I did it again so that you would have this and use it, try it, have fun with it, and know again, this paper here that I'm using, just so you know, is hot press. So it's behaving a little bit, wait a second, I might be wrong. Wait a minute, no. This is cold press paper, but it's a totally different kind of paper. And I've tried it before, and it's not my favorite, but it was good enough for a demonstration. So the reason I thought it was hot press is it acts a lot like hot press. And they've done something to this surface, so it's really easy to lift off. Super easy to lift. So there's the shadow start. Like I said, have fun with it. Also, don't do your final shadows value until you distinguish what the final values are for your subjects, because that makes a whole lot of difference for your entire painting, okay? When I'm looking at the value of these right now compared to what's on the reference photo, I may not go much darker at all. I might just add one more real thin wash and leave it. But I have to determine that when I'm done with that. Okay? So there you go. Shadows a la Julia's palette. And I'll see you soon.